Okay, hey everyone. So my name is Teleo Lawson. Thanks again for joining the Mining the Gap between Service Desk and DevOps. I hope all of you have a good day. Presenting today's presentation is Jeroen Boks. He's the CIO of TOPdesk. We have Sam Fell, the AVP of Marketing for CloudBees, and Gabriel Martinez, Product Marketing in CloudBees too. We would love to save some time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions you might have, so please utilize this feature. At the conclusion of the webinar, we will send you an email that will contain a copy of the presentation, the video, and the link that I'll communicate with you in a second. So thanks again for joining. We hope you enjoyed today's topic, and take it away, Sam.
Wonderful, thank you, Telly. So before we move off of this slide, I think I'm going to give our esteemed panelists a bit more time to introduce themselves. We are going to be talking about ITIL and DevOps, and Jeroen, who's the CIO of TOPdesk, you've been dealing with this for quite a long time, haven't you, Jeroen? I believe you're muted. Jeroen, you're muted. Gabe, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning. Thanks to everyone for joining the webinar today. Yeah, it's great to be a part of this. Looking forward to sharing the story that that TOPdesk has with the way that they've leveraged Flow for their organization. But yeah, great to be here. I work in product marketing for CloudBees. You're in?
Wonderful. I think Jeroen is back now.
Yes, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Good morning, Jeroen, or good afternoon for you. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself and your position at TOPdesk and how you kind of came to know Electric Cloud and CloudBees.
Yes, I'll be glad to. Thank you for inviting me. I've been working with TOPdesk for over a couple of years, since 2003. Since 2007, we started our SaaS services and started diving into DevOps and continuous deployment type of topics. And just a couple of years ago, we ran into you guys basically when we were constantly facing each other at the same customers and helping each other out there. So that was an interesting opening, and it started interesting discussions.
Wonderful. Well, we're really excited to have you joining us. We think this is a very topical conversation for a lot of folks who've been operating in one way for a long time, and they think to themselves, how can I ever possibly make the transition to DevOps? So let's go to the next slide. I'll do a quick rundown on the topic, and then I'll set you free to go through all the great content that you've created. So the topic and the agenda sort of today, we're going to be talking about the disconnect between modern DevOps and ITIL ITSM practices. What we're seeing is that they are creating bottlenecks for organizations who are trying to get to continuous delivery. So today, Jeroen, Gabe, and myself are going to talk about different ways that we can help you mine those gaps and successfully marry those practices together. We're going to do that first. Jeroen is going to walk us through TOPdesk's service delivery and DevOps journey, how they got to be where they are today. We're going to then switch to Gabe, who's going to go through solving that enterprise release management problem, taking that value that's being created in dev and moving it in an efficient and predictable way into production. And then we'll talk a little bit about what comes after you've already started the process of getting to continuous delivery. You've got your ITIL and your DevOps working well together. What do you do next? Jeroen, I'll pass it off to you.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, to start off with, to get some context, our company is a service management company. We both build and provide the product to support that, and we have the consultancy around those topics. So in normal day-to-day, we encounter customers that either have their internal support being supported by our services and applications, or their external support. That gives an interesting view on the companies that are out there, very broad. And well, recently we found out that more and more share the same challenges. And my interesting position is that we share the same challenge as well. So building up the experience internally, we can link it directly to what we can do at our customers to improve it there. We as a product have all kinds of solutions for the problems that people have on a day-to-day task. So for instance, we have workflow support for service requests, but you also need to keep track of your assets that you're actually supporting. We are very keen on providing self-service ability, and we have all kinds of modules around the specific topics that we link together, both in ICT, as HR, as facility management, and others. But I'll come back to that in a sec. Basically, what we the job that we're into is connecting the dots within an organization to make sure that people that need help will actually be helped in a consolidated way, not going from one stop to another to get their things done, but have a one-stop shop to get you quickly into the position that you're productive again and on your way. So basically what we're into is we try companies to get into service excellence, be excellent at helping their customers, whichever they are. And over the years, we've learned that most of the opportunities lie in breaking down silos. So traditionally, you would have an ICT department, an HR department, and facility department that are combinedly doing something for instance, a new employee that comes on board, but they will operate quite isolated, and the people receiving those services will notice. So what we've been doing is centralizing the customers there, make sure that those who need help are being helped in one consistent way. But if you look at the background, it also includes the suppliers and the service providers behind that. So to make sure that you provide a sound service, you must make sure that everybody in the chain is connected, collaborating efficiently, and having the information available that is needed to do that. We call that enterprise service management, that whole broad market. Now, if you look at what we're doing, our company is still growing. We are doing that throughout the world. All kinds of companies that are doing that. The green dots on this card are our own offices around the world. And at the moment, we are at the rate of one office a year extra to cover the globe eventually. Our newest office is in Australia, which is just opened, and we're still growing rapidly. So that's one of the challenges internally also, make sure that what we do, that we can keep doing that while growing. The typical type of customer is difficult to pinpoint because of enterprise service management. The characteristics, they are throughout the whole industry, which makes it very interesting to be there. So the first contact between our two companies was basically when we constantly ran into the same customer again. So more and more we found out that that there is a challenge to be solved in the industry, which sort of makes a combination between service management where we are, and we, from a TOPdesk point of view, we ran more and more into the DevOps challenge that is out there. So the first talk started out, and one of the outcomes of those talks was, well, good connections and good conversations on the topic, but also that we became a customer of CloudBees. Just to get into the topic as deep as possible, solve our own problems, and along the way learn what those problems are and how we can add to that at our customers again. Basically what you see is that the whole realm that we're working here is overlapping in DevOps. So being an effective company means that you know what your goals are, know what to achieve. You have the development in place to support that. And once it has been built, it can be run and supported properly on the operations side. The overlap in those three is basically where DevOps steps into, with all kinds of tooling, culture, organization, challenges that come along with it. Our mission with DevOps was to increase the speed of development and the deployments. Like every other company out there, we are confronted with a market that is changing rapidly. We have a whole lot of ideas that we want to build and get out there towards our customers. And we have learned that development cycles like we had in the past is inhibiting us from learning fast enough to increase the learning cycle and make sure that we build the right stuff at the right time. But at the same time, when we stepped into that realm, we ran into a problem that is apparently happening all around the industry at the moment, because we are on the service management side often. And what we see often is that on that side, people are working hard to solve questions of your customers, to solve service requests. They leverage tools like knowledge management to make sure that they can do that rapidly and consistently. Make sure that you have the customer satisfaction, that you have an eye on that, what is happening out there, and that you get the feature requests and other kinds of feedback back into your system again. While being effective at DevOps, you see that a strange thing is happening now. If you happen to be too fast, which happens if you're successful in DevOps, then you will run into the situation that your customers and your customer-facing departments will run into newer products than that they knew about. So going too fast may lead to situations where your customer satisfaction will go down. Going too slow and not reacting fast enough will cause you to lag behind in features or take too long to solve known problems, for instance, which will cost extra on the support side. So basically what we saw happening was that you have a change part in your organization, which is, for instance, adopting agile methods and DevOps methodology and tools to make sure that they build the new features. And on the run side, you have the basically the usage of that. So you see new features being built and new features being out there. And what is often forgotten is that the experience of your customer is also influenced by the existing product out there. But also by the services being delivered on top of that, and even with the platform beneath it. So even if you're on Amazon and Azure or Google Cloud or any other provider beneath it, their quality will influence the total customer experience. Traditionally, ITSM is focused on the whole spectrum of what is influencing the customer experience. But DevOps is focused on the product delivery, so the part that you are actually changing. And the feedback is needed, and Agile often says that it's very customer focused, but often it is sort of limited to the part that they are changing, while the customer experience is constantly coming in, but not directly fed into that feedback loop again. So optimally, the feedback will be brought over all of the experience and feature backlog. And then you will use the agile methodology to focus where you are going to make the changes and make sure that you can put them out there. Well, this is basically the theory behind it. And we've been working hard to make sure that all the components will step into place, where on the ITSM part, we recognize more and more that the traditional change management is basically the part that is being highly affected by Agile. While the other parts of ITSM are actually beneficial also to the Agile process if you do that correctly. So basically, while working on this, we more and more encountered that the missing link in breaking down silos is breaking down the DevOps silo now. And that is the real challenge that we also ran into. Our own support department also recognized those challenges. New products being put out there before they even knew about them, getting customer feedback, but development wasn't working on those. So what do you do with that feedback? That was basically the challenge. Yeah.
Right. And Jeroen, so looking at your your graphic right now, you've got software delivery management written down there, which, as our audience, anyone who has been following what CloudBees has been talking about for about the past 6 months, software delivery management, as you know, is a new category of solutions being introduced in the market to help people get these silos broken down and to help that information about that critical software business, that software delivery business function, to give everybody in HR and facilities and finance and product management and engineering and dev and ops that visibility into that process of software delivery. So it's really interesting to see how that naturally sort of occurred inside of TOPdesk as you guys were trying to figure out how to amplify the benefit that you're getting and the feedback loops that you're getting from your own software delivery practices using some of CloudBees' existing tooling in order to help provide that exact same visibility and those insights into what's happening. I think that's just very interesting.
Correct. Yes, so the parts where that really helps, for instance, yeah, I've already mentioned, we are basically the playground where we can try it out and make sure that it works before we start also promoting it at our customers. So yeah, part of a challenge that we had is we are growing rapidly, like I mentioned before. We are constantly opening up new hosting locations to provide the software to all of our customers. We have a current growth rate of about 60 customers per month, just to give an indication of what we're up to. Our traditional way of working needed to be broken down because we needed to implement things like AI and machine learning inside of our software to make that we stay relevant in this sector and make the most out of the technology available. Our old way of working was inhibiting us from making those steps, so we needed to change. And because of that, we're also changing from a monolithic approach towards our customers towards a service architecture, which should be more scalable and provides more and more means to include different types of technology that will actually help our customers. So the challenge was getting bigger and bigger. But we were already on the way. We had all kinds of solutions from CloudBees already in place. For instance, the continuous integration was something that we had for about a decade already. But until recently, we weren't able to stretch that into production. So while we had a working build every day and it was being used internally for reviews and to make sure it was ready, we were still on a 9-month release cycle towards production. But we were using them internally for sneak previews and things like that. That was already in place. Our own support department is now in continuous delivery as well for quite a while already, the first environment that goes out there. And then it's being rolled out in stages throughout our customer base. That was challenging. The old method to do that left us with a 9-month cycle. Once we started implementing the continuous deployment part of it, which CloudBees was really the tool to get towards, we brought it down to a 2-week cycle that we are currently into. That's for a monolith that we are currently still using for quite a part of our services. For the new parts that we're working on now, we are actually working and breaking down further the silos within development. And that's from CloudBees Flows, for example, really made a difference. We finally saw what was happening throughout the process. And we found out that people were actually waiting for each other unnecessarily, emailing each other and waiting for confirmation and things like that. So by getting this insight and optimizing the process from that part, we were even able to cut down 50% of the monolithic release. So we're now able to do that a weekly cycle. We do it on a two-weekly cycle, but we are able to do it within a week now. And on the services part, we really dove into that. And that's where our own development department have control over deployment now through standardized pipelines to production. And further insight helped us to lower it even further from 2 weeks to 15 minutes. Now our challenge is to make sure that we get everything into the service architecture, but because then we're in a place that we really want to be in, get direct feedback on the products that you're doing, have the means to quickly adapt when you see something happening. The second part, which we are what we think is really important that is also needed in the industry, is not only get the tools into place, because that will support getting that slack out of the process, but now the interesting part is coming into place and breaking the silo of DevOps by providing the information that you already have in that silo that really helps inside the silo to make it also available for the other departments. So these kinds of questions pop up throughout the whole of your organization when you're not able to use the information that you had in the DevOps cycle. So what we recognized there is, if we would be able to provide it to everyone and have the same information available for everyone, then it's easier to collaborate. One of those examples is our service department. If they now know that a deployment took place last night or 15 minutes ago, and something happens in production, they'll quickly go through the loops and reach out to the developer team directly to get the feedback. And that used to take weeks in the old situation, and can be done in minutes by now.
Yeah, and that's, again, coming back to this whole idea of software delivery management, the idea of all functions collaborating, everyone having common language, everyone having these universal insights to help them understand what software has been shipped that's customer facing. And you mentioned your support folks having that knowledge. So critical to allow an organization to modernize the way that they are providing services to their end users. So really, really excited to see that, again, organically happening at a customer well before we had started talking about software delivery management as a category of tools that people need, because there is this latent need out there. And I'm guessing if you're listening and you're looking at your own environment, you could probably use some of that transparency, as Jeroen was sort of mentioning.
Yes, that is correct. So this is one of those examples giving insight into our pipeline based on the information that was provided by CloudBees Flow. We had the information. What we are now providing towards our shared customers is the ability to integrate the tools. So one way to get the information at the place and the time where you actually need it is make sure that you don't have to change tools all the time. So what you see here is the same information, but in one place in a specific way that is useful for development, and the same information in just another format which makes sense for the support department. The same information, the same source, but within your own tool, within your own context. So one of the things that we now have in place is breaking down that silo by providing a standard plugin between those two tools, and helping our customers with the experience that we've built up here. And by that, we are trying to get that experience out there again to make sure that others will benefit from that as well.
Excellent.
That's great. I think go ahead, Sam. Sorry to mean to headbutt you there.
Go ahead, Gabe. That's okay. I was just going to have him hand it over to you, but you'll do that yourself.
Absolutely. And I think one of the great things, just looking at that, is just the results. So, I mean, you talk about the SDM, software delivery management, how it sort of influenced and sort of naturally occurred in their process there. But I think it's really interesting to see how the load's been lifted just from a saving standpoint, from time to maybe even resources as well. I mean, I can imagine that's been a little bit of a weight that's lifted off the shoulders there. Jeroen, for TOPdesk, it seems like, right?
It is, yes.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to provide a little bit more context around Flow itself. So I am in product marketing for Flow, and wanted to provide a little bit more depth inside of what Flow actually is, how, you know, I guess the engine behind how it worked for TOPdesk there a little bit as well. So to start off, you know, we take a look at what different releases might look like, right? So let's imagine that there's various different releases that you might work on specifically, right? So if you have one team that's using one specific app, and maybe you're releasing it into a single environment, you can imagine that it's generally relatively pretty easy to connect all of these different dots if it's linear like this. And this is including different various DevOps tooling that you might have, whether that's Jira or Jenkins or Selenium. And it's even if it's going into something like Kubernetes. So ideally, this is sort of that utopian world, right, where there's no hiccups, there's no issues. It's sort of a nice, clean, easy path through your tooling all the way through, let's say, Kubernetes again. But we know that that's not reality. So when we take a look at what the world actually looks like, it looks more something like this. So as you take a look at all the different tools that you're using and everything, it becomes a lot more difficult when you have multiple different streams that you're working through. So I guess the biggest question to think about is how do you manage and how do you orchestrate all of this noise? And then how do you do so in a way that's going to be governed, in a way that's more transparent, and also a way that's more auditable, right? So ultimately, that's the problem that CloudBees and Flow specifically is focused on helping organizations tackle in the world. So as we take a look at some of the core competencies, and we can go to the next slide, we break this down into 3 different areas, right? So Flow has kind of 3 main areas of automation and management for ARO or application release orchestration. The first one is deployment automation. So with a model-based approach that we've got, this is built around predictably deploying any type of application that you have, whether that is traditional, looks like we jumped ahead. Let's go back 1 screen here. There we go, awesome, cool. All right, so the deployment automation piece, right? So this model-based approach helps from a predictability standpoint with deploying any type of application that you got, whether it's a traditional Java app or microservice, and this is to any environment. The second component or core competency is around release orchestration. And I think this is sort of the main one behind Flow. And this is where you can define, you can manage all of your release pipelines that you're releasing software across your entire teams. So it's integrating with your DevOps tool chains at every single step, helping you aggregate the data along the way so you get this single view into all of the people, the processes, the tools, the environments, everything that's really a part of your release kind of fits within this release orchestration focus that we've got. And then the final piece is around DevOps Insight. And what this does is it provides the visibility, the management of all of this data that's generated, and not only through pipelines and deployments that run inside Flow, but it also pulls data from your entire DevOps toolchain. So, thinking about looking at outside of the out-of-the-box dashboards that you got, you can also create your own custom dashboards. And this is to help give you visibility into metrics that are actually important or that matter to the role or the specific, part you play within the organization or within the team. So if we jump into the next slide, there's 3 main pillars that Flow kind of stands on, right? The first one is around delivering value. So you deliver value faster, and this helps to integrate and orchestrate all the different teams, tools, and processes that you have. And the end goal being is to drive that time to market, to bring to market faster. The second is predictability. And this enables you to have more repeatable, more manageable, predictable workflows, which is going to lead to a more reliable path to production. And the end goal, again, on this one is automation. That's going to be a key one. And the final one that we look at is built around compliance, which is going to help with enforcing everything from auditing to security to governance. The keyword there, again, automation, but it's giving you, sort of that role-based access control. So making sure that you've got full visibility into all of your releases, you're able to control the different areas within the team and who controls what, who's able to see what, who's able to work with what. So those are the 3 kind of main areas that Flow is helping to bring to market. And ultimately, what we'd like to help everyone sort of accomplish is taking the stress out of releasing software. I think not only is that the goal of Flow, I think Sam would probably agree that from a service or a software delivery management standpoint as a whole is, not just going at the speed of business, but actually setting the pace for the business itself and really driving that forward. So that's kind of what Flow is accomplishing there. Now, if we jump into the next one, I wanted to invite everyone that is joining on the call as well to be able to take a look at Flow a little bit more closely, be able to see a demo, take a tour. and I've given the URL right there, but I've even made it easier for everyone. So you can just take out your mobile phone, your iPad, whatever device that you've got. You can actually scan this QR code, and it'll take you right to. It's kind of neat. I like that. We've got the technology piece in it, right? It's not just URLs anymore. We've got QR codes. We've got all these different things.
With
and
the
we made
logo
it fancy.
behind it, I think it's very fancy.
Fancy colors, logos, everything, you name it.
Yeah.
So it's easy. You pull that out, scan it, it brings you right to there, and we're happy to give you a more guided tour of that, because there's a lot of different components within Flow beyond, release orchestration. Like I mentioned, deployment automation is another great one. We can cover elements of compliance. I know there's a lot of partners that we work with that are pretty heavily regulated. So there's definitely a great story there as well. And yeah, we invite you to take a look at that a little bit more closely. So with that, I will pass the baton over to my esteemed colleague Sam, who is going to walk us through the next part, which is covering sort of moving beyond it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions. So, so we talked a lot about what Jeroen and the TOPdesk team have been doing, and the fact that sort of in their journey to combine their ITIL, their service desk sort of processes and DevOps, that they focused a lot on sort of breaking down barriers. And so the fact is, and what we've seen in the market, and likely what you're seeing inside of your own organizations, is there are still lots of gaps. Once you've solved the dev and ops gaps, there are gaps between DevOps and the service desk. There are gaps between, and let's, instead of calling it DevOps, let's just call it your software delivery engine, your software and innovation creation engine. There are gaps between that group and other groups in your organization. If you think about how finance fits in, is your finance team still trying to give you an 18-month or a 1-year budget when you're focusing on, as Jeroen was talking about, doing things in a more agile way and doing more agile sprints? How do you make sure that finance is aware of what's happening, and that they can tick and tie off what you're doing and the value you're providing with the money that's being spent? From a support perspective, similar thing. How do they, as Jeroen mentioned, how do they know what version of the software that your users are now consuming was delivered 10 minutes ago, or 5 minutes ago, or 3 seconds ago? So when the support person is on the phone with a TOPdesk customer, how do you make sure that the advice that they are giving to those customers is not contraindicatory to, you don't want to be troubleshooting a problem and actually giving the person the wrong information. So if we can go to the next slide. So Jeroen's slide talks about DevOps being that next silo for software delivery management, and pulling that that silo of information in with all of the other silos of information that already exist inside of your organization, so that you can either outbound, focusing on customers, or focusing on your partners or your service providers or suppliers, making sure that you're responding with one voice, that there's not a lot of thrashing around trying to find the right answer. Next slide. So the idea of software delivery management, and again, this was announced back in April when CloudBees acquired Electric Cloud. The idea for this category has its roots in a lot of the work that they had done interviewing customers, talking with people who are, CloudBees has lots of customers who are really leading the way from a software perspective across pretty much every vertical. And across all of those different verticals, one of the things that we saw was there was a lack of ability for functions, all these different business functions, to be collaborating with connected processes against some common data. They had no way of understanding, again, what version was in which environment, which customers were using which version, what user stories were being developed and already in the pipeline, and how would those impact marketing, and how would those impact sales. When things are deployed, how does that impact support? So you can see there's a lot of interconnected processes that need to happen that we felt were not happening to the extent that they needed to for companies to really modernize and become a software-driven organization. And so software delivery management is a framework to allow anybody in the industry, and there are already other customers who are certainly thinking this way, but other vendors as well, who are saying, okay, how do we make sure that we're tying all these different pieces together so that all of these teams get that universal insight to be able to understand and lean out that entire process for our end users with the goal of amplifying that value. Next slide, please. So if you are interested, if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, there is a preview program already available. You can go and obviously take a look at CloudBees Flow, which is a product that's, last year it was the most visionary for application release orchestration on the Gartner Magic Quadrant, top right in the Forrester Wave for that function, for the ability to release that software. So in its own right, it can give you lots of benefit and help you, again, eliminate that release anxiety that you may feel. But if you're looking to try and help us create the next generation of solutions that's going to encompass both that release part as well as all of the building, all of the planning, all of the post-deployment support, the finance, all of those different aspects. If you are interested in that, if that's something that you care about, then we urge you to join our preview program, because we're looking for customers who want to stretch that idea, who want to try and sort of push the boundaries of what they think is possible. HSBC is one of our larger customers. They actually are a customer as well as an investor. They believe very strongly in that vision. They see that every day inside of their four walls. And actually, they have a lot more than four walls. It's a really large bank. But they invested $10 million in CloudBees just about 4 months ago, because they also see that this is a need, that it's a latent need that is going to be, if we can solve it, it's going to unlock a ton of value for themselves and all their customers mostly. So I urge you to join the preview program. You can, we'll put these links when we put the webinar PowerPoint and the video up on the website. You'll be able to get to these different links to download a white paper about software delivery management. I've just scratched the surface about the thoughts here. And you can obviously go to our website and learn more about software delivery management as well. So I'm about at the end of time. We have 3 minutes for questions, but we probably can go a little bit long. Telly, do you want to take it away and ask some questions to the panel?
Oh yeah, definitely. So we have one question here. It says, how do you see TOPdesk leveraging Flow more for CI/CD? And Jeroen, I guess you'd be the best person to answer.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Well, the next things that we're going to do is make sure that our drive towards a service architecture is actually going to leverage the insight that we're getting now. So we're just learning from what the insights that we're now getting, and we are constantly pinpointing a next point in our deployment processes, basically, and our collaboration that we need to solve. So we're now working on getting the dev teams in a position that they will have full control over their own services and can take the responsibility to make them excellent toward customers. One of our problems is scalability. We get more and more development teams, and just having one operations team that gets all the signals is not going to work in the future. So we need to get that to the development teams themselves.
Thanks. This question actually follows it up. What was the process like in getting your tools team's processes actually integrated with Flow?
We had a pipeline guild within the development group, and they were already working on integration and things like that. But about 2 years ago, they well, they noticed the same problems that I just mentioned, and they started working with the operations team, because we all noticed that constantly just throwing things over the wall wasn't working. So back then, the build guild that we have and the operations team grouped up, got into contact with CloudBees. We found out about Flow, and we focused first on getting the drawbacks out of the process that we encountered most. And from that starting point on, our CI/CD pipeline actually just perfectly fitted into the production pipeline that we already had. So step by step, we're taking on the biggest problem that we encountered, and then taking on the next one and the next one. And by doing that, we're constantly learning about the next bottleneck that we encounter.
Yeah, that's cool. And this is a last question kind of relating to the same topic. So talking about challenges, what areas of the DevOps transformation do you think was the most challenging for you during this journey?
I think the most challenging problem still is culture. So while we used to have a culture of building something and then throwing it over the wall towards operation, we are now getting into this new situation, but people are also sort of reluctant. Hey, I'm now getting responsibility over what I've just built. What does that mean? Am I getting stressed, or will I be getting more work? But what basically happens is that the work is decreasing. So we have to go through a period of assumptions and old habits that we have to unlearn and learn to benefit from the new situation that we are just creating now.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thank you for that. I also have a question on the CloudBees end. Does Flow have any machine learning built into the technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say yes. So Flow specifically has some machine learning built in to help be able to predict future risk. And this is through what we have called DevOps Foresight. So we predict this future risk in the release process, and it's built using this patented machine learning and pattern identification technology that we've got inside of the platform as well. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's just to expand on that a little bit. It's based on DevOps Insight, which is a part of the solution that allows you to basically integrate with all the tools you're currently using. So Jira, Jenkins, Quality Center, whatever those tools are in your tool chain, we have the ability to import a lot of the data. So if you're looking at a Jira user story, you could tell exactly which, how many builds have been done against that, what the tests are coming back like, which release that user story is in. And you can track that user story all the way into production. And what we're finding is that as you start to track these things as they move through your pipeline, there are errors that occur, there are problems that occur in certain environments, and the machine learning that Gabe was talking about, DevOps Foresight, uses that data, runs an ML algorithm across it to try and help, again, identify where the risk may be and highlight ways for you to remediate that risk or mitigate that risk as you're moving forward. Like, hey, you might want to do an extra security pipeline because after you release this stuff, we found an incident or a problem in production, those types of things in ServiceNow, for instance, or TOPdesk as a better, for instance.
Yeah. No. Okay. No. Thank you. Well, that is all the questions I have. So I just wanted to say thank you everyone for taking the time to participate in today's webinar. I hope you found it informative. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the CloudBees team. We'll always, try to the best of our ability to help you out. As stated before, we'll be sending all of you a copy of the presentation after the webinar. You'll also get the links that were discussed. Thanks again. Hope you guys all have a great day, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Thank you to the speakers for taking the time to speak today about what you spoke on. We really appreciate it. Well, I just hope everyone has a great day, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Telly. Thanks, Jeroen.
Thanks,
You're
everyone.
very welcome. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Cheers.